Welcome back to watching Business Morning on Channels Television. The federal government has reviewed the current allocation of terminals to pre-shipment inspection agents for the oil and gas sector. The regulator says that this is to enhance efficiency, that's CBN, that is to enhance efficiency in the sector and ensure transparency in crude oil exports. The bank notes that the restructuring is aimed at improving efficiency and maintaining strict oversight in Nigeria's oil and gas export operations. Also, we know that the government has reviewed the PIAs assigned to the monitoring and evaluation of agents. So let's break this down and find out how it really concerns, well, the average Nigerian, and we're doing that with Professor Damilola Olawuyi. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria, obviously in the oil and gas sector. Prof, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
I must say that you will help us to understand a whole lot of things, concerning this, because, I mean, an average man would be, oh, okay, what's the allocation of terminals? What's this review of it? Help us to understand the bigger picture of all of this and the essence of CBN's intervention or review at this time.
Well, thank you very much. It's a comprehensive process. When we talk of pre-shipment inspection, it's normally designed to ensure that government's interest is protected when products leave our terminals to go abroad. So the export of our products and the sale of our products. So normally such inspection is meant to check that what is going out is in accordance to what is declared on paper, is to prevent duty evasion, to prevent capital flights. So to ensure that we get value for what is being exported from the oil and gas sector. That is the aim of pre-shipment inspection. Normally in other parts of the world, this is carried out by government itself. So we're talking of maybe a government entity doing this. But in some countries too, they outsource that to private sector entities. So through a procurement process, they get private sector participants to be doing that on behalf of government. And what you have just reported is exactly what has happened. So the CBN has appointed those private sector participants that will be doing those pre-shipment inspection on behalf of government. Of course, there are questions why government will not do this by itself. There are questions why this is being done by the CBN. You will recall that before now, it was the NNPC that was responsible for pre-shipment inspection or appointing private sector participants to do it on their behalf. But some months back, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did transfer that responsibility to the CBN. And now the CBN, in exercise of that authority given by the president, has just appointed those that will be doing the pre-shipment inspection.
So I believe I saw customs is also part of these agents.
Yes. So like I said, when you talk of the government, because we are talking of avoiding evasion of custom duties as well. So normally the government entities that are interested in pre-shipment inspection will be NNPC, CBN, customs, and any other entity that is interested, even tax authorities, those monitoring the fiscal aspect of the export of petroleum products.
But does this help us to bring sanity or transparency in our crude management? Because, well, unfortunately, we did see last release showing that there's been a drop in our crude production. And we've been talking about oil theft and perhaps uncertainty and questions around the area of oil theft. Oh, it's the professionals that can do it and all of that. Does this bring sanity to that value chain?
The answer is yes. This, when you outsource some of the responsibilities away from government entities, the thinking behind it is to promote efficiency. The private sector is often known for efficiency, to be able to get the job done, to achieve results, quick results. So that's indeed one of the policy thinking behind outsourcing this responsibility and selecting private sector experts and companies that have done this over time, that have the infrastructure, they have the laboratories, they have the fiscal tools to be able to monitor every aspect of the inspection process. So the whole aim is to achieve efficiency, to achieve transparency, It's also part of an attempt to implement the Petroleum Industry Act, which aims to restructure the way oil and gas business is done in Nigeria. So in principle, it's a commendable step that aims to block some of the loopholes when it comes to crude oil theft, illicit capital flight, declaring something on paper different from what is being exported. So those are some of the problems we've lamented about over the years. And so it's good to see that the government is taking the necessary steps to bring private sector efficiency in the monitoring process.
But I guess it will also come to who in the private sector is being given this responsibility, because if it's being given to the man who knows the man in government, we shouldn't expect anything different, as we've seen in many cases in Nigeria, Prof.
Exactly, and I sort of highlighted some of those problems, and you've seen some transparency groups raising two key concerns with what has just been announced. Number one is the process in which the participants have been selected. Concerns whether there was a fair and transparent procurement process, because anything relating to government should go through public procurement, transparent public procurement practices, and there have been concerns whether this was the case in respect of the appointments. That's number one. Of course, number two is that some see that the sudden replacement of those that were doing this before now and may also send the wrong signal to investors in the oil and gas sector in terms of whether there is really certainty, whether when you do business with government, there's certainty of term, because, some were appointed just very recently actually to do this job, and now they have all been replaced with new people. So those concerns and questions will have to be managed carefully because like you mentioned, government business has to be transparent. It should not be about who you know in getting some of these key roles. And so those questions that transparency entities and organizations have raised would have to be carefully addressed by the CBN to instill confidence, and investor confidence is very key in the oil and gas sector.
So do you think perhaps communication from the CBN at this time on the new people or agents or agencies that now constitute this monitoring group, do you think that's what's necessary? Or do you think that, because as you noted, I don't know, perhaps I missed it, where it was announced for the process and open to people to participate in it?
Exactly. I think communication would be very key. And part of transparency is also to make this information available, right? I would have expected the CBN, when announcing these new entities, to sort of also provide information on the procurement process. This is information that should be available on the website of the CBN, for example, and it's not available. So you would think the CBN will walk us through the process leading to the selection of this new participant. When was the procurement process announced? How were they shortlisted? How were they recruited? What is the term? What are their key performance indicators? What are we going to expect from them in terms of bringing clarity, transparency, and sanity really to the oil and gas sector? So when this information is not publicly available, then it leaves room for doubts. It leaves room for people to say, okay, maybe again, it's probably someone who knows someone that was selected, which may not necessarily be the case. So the best way to counter such assumptions is to provide information. We need to enhance transparency, efficiency in the oil and gas sector. The more information that could be readily available will be better in this regard.
So who regulates this group, though? We know the CBN is in charge of that, but I don't know about the technicalities of it. So we have this group now, and they're supposed to monitor the crude exports. Who is above them directly that we can question and ensure that this group is actually doing what they ought to be doing transparently?
So they were appointed and selected by the CBN. So the CBN will be the number one entity that will provide us progress report on whether these private sector inspection agents are complying with laid down rules and whether they are doing their job. So you would, the CBN will be the number one entity. And of course, much of that would have to be with the collaboration of the NNPC as well. So the NNPC, of course, will be closely involved in their activities, as well as the customs, will be involved as well. But ultimately, the hiring entity is the CBN, so we expect a lot from them in providing us regular updates and information on how the appointment of these new pre-inspection enterprises or entities have resulted in greater transparency, have resulted in greater accountability, and have resulted in more transparent management of our resources, which is the ultimate aim here.
So, I mean, mentioning NNPCL there, it just reminds me that we have a new man on the board. After how many years Mr. Mele Kyari is no longer leading that entity, it's now Mr. Ojulari. So this is another responsibility on him. And well, we cannot ask him any question now, seeing that it's less than 24 hours since if he has even resumed in the office yet. But what are your expectations with this change in leadership at the NNPCL?
Well, the announcement is very fresh, and we are all hoping that it will mean greater and much more efficient implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act. Of course, we can start by congratulating Mr. Ojulari and the entire team for being found worthy of this appointment. And so we to whom much is given, much is expected. So of course, there is a weight of expectation that they will move swiftly into action to ensure the consolidation of the gains we've recorded under the Petroleum Industry Act, to ensure continuity of those gains and to address existing loopholes. One thing I must stress is that government should be seen as continuum. And when dealing in the oil and gas sector that requires a lot of investor confidence, then we should be careful of sweeping changes that will abandon some of the progress made. We just talked about this pre-inspection and entities that have just been appointed. And it would be concerning for investors if we don't consolidate. And then if all of a sudden we're talking about a new set being appointed, for example, and I hope that is not the case. So we need to ensure that continuity in policy making, continuity in the implementation. We need to be very, very careful to avoid things that will rupture investor confidence in our oil and gas sector. Because when investor confidence is not there, then it will open doors for divestment, which we don't want.
So we certainly hope that Mr. Ojulari would continue at least the projects that have started. Another thing, I mean, when I heard this announcement was, I do know that Mr. Mele Kyari was also passionate about gas infrastructure, a lot of work going on there. And I do hope that Mr. Ojulari will also look that way, at least continue with the project that have started, because it's common say that Nigeria has more gas than oil, and yet we're not doing much with it. Yes, and the consoling or the satisfying fact about the gas issue is that this is a direct pivotal policy of the current government, right? So it is a central aspect of President Tinubu's policy to ensure that we maximize the use of our gas resources. So I don't expect that to change. I mean, the president has made this very, very clear that we're going to invest in gas infrastructure and we're going to maximize our natural gas resources to regain our position as a leading energy hub in the world. And of course, that is also crucial to energy security. It's crucial to our economic development as well. So I'm confident that the new leadership of NNPCL will continue with those natural gas projects that will address energy poverty, that will address electricity deficits in the country. And I know that those investments would also lead to economic gains as well as the world tries to achieve a just and inclusive energy transition. I believe that sustaining those investments in gas infrastructure projects will be very key. And I hope that the new leadership of NNPCL will double their efforts in this regard. All right, I hope so too. Professor Damilola Olaoye, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you so much for your views this morning. Thank you so much for having me.